So full stack is just basically, you'll hear this a lot, full stack web development is just a combination of front end and back end. A full stack developer is expected to basically do both things, front end and back end. So really what they do is they can take data from the database, take it as it's needed, give it to the front end, and then on the front end they can present and make the whole web page. So everything we just talked about, the full stack developer should be able to do that. So I was going to open this, but I don't have my laptop. I don't know if this is connected to Wi-Fi. But really, if you go on Nike, you see your product image, you see your buttons on the side. All of that would be the front-end developer. And if something isn't in stock, you'll see it maybe grayed out. It's the back-end developer's job to make sure, okay, like are these shoe sizes available? What colors are available? Just the information about the specific data on Nike.com is the back-end developer's job, and making sure everything looks nice on the page, it's very well laid out, is the front-end developer's job. So why should you invest your time learning web development? There's so many other fields in computer science. Why web development? I think the most important is that more than half the world's population is now online. So that means that you have the potential to really make an impact if you build a website. It's going to be very easily accessible to people. Anybody can use your website, and you might not know what people need, and if you give it to them, they'll start using it, and the website is the best way for something to explode like that. Low starting costs. If you're developing a website, maybe some of you guys have, all you need is an internet connection, a computer. Most software packages, libraries, frameworks are open source. They're free. Even if you want to put a website online, there are ways you can do it for free. So really, it's a very easy way to start building software. It's a pretty well documented field. There are a lot of really good online tutorials, courses offered by people doing it on their own, by universities giving free courses, and there's a learning curve. So anytime you run into an issue, you guys probably use Stack Overflow, I don't know, but you probably see answers to common problems on that, and web development is really well documented on there as well. So the next point goes off of how many people are online now, like more than half the world's population. So there's a strong job market for web developers. Everyone needs a website. Any business needs a website, even if their work is not powered by it, they need it for marketing purposes. So really, every company would need some sort of web presence. So web developers are needed, everywhere. The other great thing is that you can use the sort of software technologies and frameworks you use for the web to build mobile applications. You can use technologies like Ionic and React Native to build mobile apps. You can use sort of React to build web apps. So it's a really good way to build multiple things using the same skill set. And again, even if you have a software application using machine learning or AI, maybe something with parallel processing, at the end of the day, there's some other user who's going to be using it. And typically how that's going to be done is through a web application, a web interface. So even if you're doing something else, and that's the main part of your company or your project, whatever you're doing, typically, however, you give it to your end user is a web application. So it's really good to know how can you do that, how can you present it to the user. So the fundamentals of web development are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. These are the backbones of how you write code for the web. HTML describes the structure of a web page, CSS, how a web page would look, and JavaScript, what actions, how can the user click buttons, what happens when they click buttons, how can they interact with the elements on a web page. Does anybody know are you guys familiar? How many people are familiar with HTML, CSS, JavaScript? Can anybody tell me what HTML stands for? Do you know why it's called hypertext markup language? What's the technical reason behind it?
It depends on text.
Depends on text, but what does it mean to mark up and hyper?
It goes from one page to another page.
Yeah, so pretty much it's called hypertext because you can link a document to any other document, and that's why it means hyper. And then it isn't really a programming language. All you're doing is taking text and annotating it with tags. So what you're doing is telling the browser that this is, by surrounding it in tags, that this is what the text should look like and this is what it should do. With HTML and CSS, you wouldn't consider it programming languages. There are no variables, there are no functions. It's just text-based languages, very simple, straightforward. So really what HTML does is, by using tags, again, annotating text and telling the browser this is a header, this is a list, this is a table, and this is how it should be displayed and the order of things it should be displayed in. So the next thing is CSS, cascading style sheets. Does anybody know why it's called cascading style sheets? There's another technical reason for cascading. So basically it's called a cascade because if you take any element on a web page, you can apply multiple styles to it. So basically the styles cascade onto the element, and you could, since there could be multiple styles, there's actually a formula for determining which style ends up applying. So that's called a cascade, and the formula resolves the cascade. So what CSS really does is HTML puts elements on the page. It says here's a header, here's a list, here's a table. What CSS does is takes those elements and adds color to them, moves them to the left, moves them to the right. It adds animations. If you're using photo galleries and they're transitioning, that's CSS. Anything with colors, fonts, borders, anything with the actual design of the web page, that's CSS. Finally, JavaScript. There's no technical reason behind the name. It has nothing to do with Java. If you've ever used it, you might realize that. The only reason it's called JavaScript is because it was made by the Netscape browser, people who made that. And they had a partnership with Sun Microsystem, which owned the license for Java, and Java was pretty popular, and JavaScript was just starting out, so they thought it would be a good marketing tool, and it just stuck. So again, it's JavaScript allows you to interact with a web page. If you're on Google Maps and you're picking different things and things are popping up, the page isn't reloading, that's JavaScript. It's making sure if you click a button, something happens. You press enter on a form, what happens? Anytime you're pressing something on a web page, clicking something on a web page, JavaScript is reacting to that and making sure it's responding to your request and it's responding to your actions. And we call that dynamic functionality because your page isn't reloading. Typically your page won't reload, it will just happen very seamlessly on the spot. It will respond to your actions. They come in two forms, SQL and NoSQL, meaning are they related, or are they of key value, or just not related databases, relational. So my recommendation, if you're just starting out and you want to learn web development, is to go and learn the MERN stack. So the thing about this, it's all JavaScript based. If you saw on the previous slide, some of the backend frameworks were Python, C#. It's a learning curve to be learning different languages and learning a completely new way of developing for the web. So it's a really good way to learn the MERN stack because for MongoDB, it's based in JavaScript. You can do database management, set up databases with it. Express for handling your HTTP requests, for building your server. Also JavaScript, React, which is made by Facebook and probably the most popular UI library, is also based in JavaScript, and Node, which helps you run Express out of the browser. Basically, JavaScript was made for the browser, and Node allows you to run JavaScript outside of the browser, so you can run Express on your web server. So all of these are based in JavaScript, and it sort of eases your learning curve if you're starting out with web development. So it's a good way to do that. So building an industry-worthy profile. I think job experience is important, but I think the two main things that have helped me and most people I know in college are projects, taking software development projects, doing them in your free time, and networking on LinkedIn. I think these are undervalued and they're really, really important because sometimes you're going to be applying to jobs and it'll feel like they're asking for so much, you feel like you don't have enough experience. They have all these skills and all these things listed, how can you possibly know and do all those? And a lot of the times you'll be learning theory and maybe taking a few electives in your computer science courses, but there's a lot of stuff that you should and you can be learning on your own. So if you're trying to think of a software development project, the best way to start is think of a problem or a challenge in your own life. It doesn't have to be something big like solving world hunger. It can be small, it can be anything. For example, last year I used Spotify a lot. Maybe if you've used it, you see at the end of the year, they give you an infographic telling you this is your favorite artist, this is your favorite songs. I wanted to know at any second what are my favorite artists and songs. So they have Spotify's API, which you can access their data, is really well documented. So I use that to build a web app to see my favorite songs and artists at any given time. Why wait till the end of the year? So if you have any interests, if you have any things like that that you think could be better, you can make them better by using the services maybe that the company's apps that you're using offer and build something on top of that. that goes to the second point. If there's nothing you can think of, look for popular APIs online. There are free data sources online, like NASA, Food Facts, WeatherBit. You can just take data from them, display it in a creative or a fun way, and it will show your design skills. It will show how to use APIs and get data from them. And then third is a bit more ambitious. Ask your family or your friends. Anyone who has a business. It's important to have a web presence, and you can be the person to help them build a website. So why not try that? Why should you do these? Because sometimes it may not be easy to get job experience. This is something that's in your control to be able to do projects, and it does convey to employers that I'm taking the time out to do this. That shows I like web development. I'm passionate about it, and then it shows that you have the skills that you can actually take a website, build it, and show it off to employers and stuff like that. So it's quite important for your profile, and you don't have to do it alone. It's even better to work in a team. With version control, GitHub, you can work in a team, and maybe employers value that even more, because if you work professionally, you're going to be working in a team, so you don't have to do it alone. Networking, this is something that I didn't even know well till maybe last year. LinkedIn is a really valuable resource. You should have your profile updated with your experience, your bio written, your picture updated, and then think of companies you want to work at. It can be your dream companies, doesn't matter how big or how small the company is. Go on their LinkedIn page and you can see their employees, and you can find and filter the roles of the employees. If you want to be a front-end engineer, software engineer, even if you want to do machine learning, AI, whatever, you can look for people in those roles. You can search for them on LinkedIn, and you should reach out to them. It's better if you have a connection, if you have mutual connections on LinkedIn with the person. Maybe they're an alumni of Dawood, maybe they're Pakistani, but even if there's no connection, you shouldn't be afraid to reach out to people who you think you could benefit having a conversation from. Because people are more willing to help than you think. A lot of people were students like us. A lot of people started out, not knowing how do I get my foot in the industry. So they're willing to help people if people ask them. So once you find someone and you look at their experience, you look at their profile, you see maybe this is what I want to do. How can I get this experience that this person has? Message them, send them an invite on LinkedIn. Be polite, be respectful. Send a very short message explaining, hey, why are you reaching out to them? Why not someone else? What is it about their profile that you think you could help, that you could benefit from talking to them about? For example, you could say that you're impressed by their career trajectory. It's something you want to do and you want advice on. Maybe they're working at your dream company. You want to know, how can I apply there? What are the qualifications I need? How can I stand out in applying there? What's the application process like? So this is just an example message. I actually sent a lot of these. Sometimes people won't reply, of course. Sometimes people would reply. I have conversations with them and I learn a lot. And really, it's, you might not have to know anyone. I didn't know the person who I was sending this to mostly. I never knew, I had no connection with anyone. But people were responsive and they were happy to help out someone who was seeking to seek help, a student who's just starting out. People have the empathy to understand the situation you're in most of the time. So, what you gain out of this is, as we mentioned, how can you strengthen your profile? How can you go to the next step? If you feel like you're lacking something, maybe these people can point you in the right direction. They probably have 20 years of experience, maybe 10 years of experience, maybe more than that. They're in senior roles and they can guide you on things that you might not even know about. If you are familiar with web development, you might know that web technologies, they change all the time. What's popular right now might not be popular in 5 years. So knowing what's trending, knowing what you should be learning and keeping up with, and knowing maybe there's something that's coming up that you should be learning, it's important to speak to them about that. And then maybe if you're not sure what type of project to work on, sometimes it's hard to figure out an idea. You can ask these people, hey, I want to build a website. Do you have any ideas? What have you worked on maybe in your free time? Can you give me some inspiration? And then again, how to gain relevant professional experience. Ask them, how did they get their first job? How did they get into the industry? How did they get their promotion to go to a senior engineer? These are things you can ask them and they'll be willing to help you out with. It's also a quick way to build your network. Once you have them on LinkedIn, they're there in your network. Maybe you could reach out to them for something in the future. Maybe they'll reach out to you for something in the future. You never know. It's a good thing to have. And sometimes when you have these conversations and they see you're enthusiastic, you have a computer science background, maybe you have the skills for their company that they're looking for, you can ask them this as well, but they might offer to refer you to their company. They might say, hey, why don't you apply to the job? I'll give you a reference. And that boosts your chances of getting the interview and getting through the interview process. So that's a really, really big plus as well. And at the end of the day, you lose nothing. Sometimes people won't reply to you. Sometimes they'll say they're busy. There's nothing you really lose. There's no bad scenario of trying to do this, and it can really, really benefit you. So the last section is, what is the job application process like if you're applying for any software engineer role in the US? And this doesn't have to be web development. It doesn't even have to be actually building software. It can be machine learning, AI, data science. It's a very similar process for those type of roles as well. And it's these 4 steps. You will start off by giving an online, into much more detail into the topics you should know, how you should learn them, how they will come into benefit when you're giving an interview, how should you approach a whiteboarding coding problem. It is a really great resource to read through. And then you should be consistently doing programming challenges on HackerRank and LeetCode. Most companies in the US, they use HackerRank to give the tests to students who are applying. So knowing the interface of HackerRank, the environment, it helps to be comfortable with it once you give that test. But LeetCode is much better in the sense that the questions you see on LeetCode, companies use those: Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Uber, PayPal, all the big companies. Most of the questions you see on LeetCode, you'll probably see on an online programming challenge, or even later in the interview on many of the steps of the interview, you'll see them. And these are just some example questions, of the online programming challenge. It'll be really to do with data structures and algorithms. They won't ask you to implement one, but you'll have to apply what you know about a data structure to solve a problem like this, like one of these problems. So if you make it past the online programming challenge, you will likely be on a phone call with a hiring manager or a recruiter. And this will be less technical. This, they'll want to see what type of person you are, how do you work in a team, why do you want to work at this company, why are you studying computer science, how you face challenges, what you learn from challenges, just to get a gauge of what type of employee you'd be at their company and why you want to be at their company. And I'll hopefully share this presentation with you guys. You can look at the link later. It's good to have answers that tell a story for each of these. You want to tell a story where, hey, I did this, this is what the outcome was, this is what my role was, how the people around me benefited from what I did, or how my story is relevant to your question. And these are questions you're pretty much always going to be asked. These few ones especially, I think I gave maybe 80 phone calls like these, and always I was asked some of these questions because it's a pretty easy way to get to know your candidate. So in order to succeed in this part, obviously it's not really technical. You just need to research the company you're applying for. How do they make revenue? What products and services do they offer their users? Who are their customers? Who are their competitors? What's going on in the industry? Check their technical blog, check their press blog, what are they up to, what are they working on. It really helps to know all of that. And every interview, not just your phone screen, but your video call, your in-person interview, it's always going to end with the interviewer asking you, do you have any questions for me? Maybe if you guys have had that experience. And you should never say no to that question. That's your chance to show that you're curious. It's your chance to show that you're enthusiastic about the job. And you want to ask some good questions. What made you want to join this company? That shows you're interested about the other person, about how they came into this company, and you want to learn more about what brings people to the company you're applying to. What does a typical day for someone in this role look like? You want to know, okay, I've seen the qualifications, but day in and day out, what will I be doing? What can I do to prepare myself for that and to succeed in this role? And that also goes off to the third point. What advice would you give someone to succeed in the job you're applying for? That shows, hey, I'm passionate. I want to excel in this role, I want to succeed, what can I do if I join to do that? So if you get past the phone screen, the next step would be a technical interview. That would be over a video call where you would be sharing a screen. It would be the same style of questions as the online programming challenge. It would be data structures, algorithms based. The only difference here is that someone is going to watch you code. So you have to really, the most important thing is conveying your thought process to the interviewer. You don't want to just start writing code. Basically, you want to tell them, this is my algorithm, this is the steps I'm going to take, this is what I'm going to do to solve the problem. And before you even do that, once the interview gives you a question, you want to clarify any assumptions you have. Sometimes the interviewers don't give you the full information because they expect you to realize, hey, something's missing. I need to know, is there anything, you need to make a very specific judgment call that, hey, I'm missing this, should I be given this, or is this missing from the question? So you want to make sure you have all the information you need before starting the problem. Then it comes down to obviously writing clean code. You can miss a semicolon here or there, but you should be consistent with how you're writing code. Your variable name should be descriptive. Things should be nicely formatted and clean with your brackets and your spacing. And once you're done with your solution, you think it works, even maybe the interviewer says, okay, this looks good. You want to run through it with some example inputs. For example, you probably wrote a function that accepts some parameters in it. You want to take some example input, you want to run it through that function step by step and show the interviewer this was what would happen in this case if we gave this input, and see if my solution would work for this input. So that shows that you can run through your solution, and that's a pretty important part of the interview. And after that, you want to tell them what's your runtime analysis in Big O. Is this O of n squared? You want to show them I know my solution in and out. I'm not just doing this as a fluke. I'm not just doing this because I saw this problem before. I actually know my solution and I can tell you everything about it. So if you make it through the video call, you'll have a final round. This is typically at the company's office. It'll be 4 to 5 hours long, 1 hour interview each. And again, it'll be the same style of problems, data structures, algorithms. The thing is now you'll actually have a whiteboard. You'll be solving it on a whiteboard. And it the reason they do this is just to see how can you last in a 4 to 5 hour interview. Even if one interview doesn't go that good, can you keep up your momentum? Because even if one interview doesn't go good, you can still get the job. So they want to see, okay, how does this candidate go the long run? How can they go the whole day doing these interviews back to back to back? And so again, the same tips that we mentioned before apply here. And then at the end of this presentation, again, hopefully we can share this with you all. I've shared some links on how can you prepare for the technical interview and things like that. Lastly, this is just general interview advice, stuff that I learned. I would always like getting to my interview early, getting time to breathe, settling down, settling in. You want to get there early, settle yourself in, take a breath or two, dress appropriately. Really depends on the company. Some companies actually don't want to see people in suits, but you don't obviously want to go in shorts or something like that either. You can ask the hiring manager what their attire is like at work, things like that, but it's better to overdress than underdress if you're not sure. You should always go to an interview with a folder with 3 or 4 copies of your resume in it to give to an interviewer when you sit down with them. If you've seen some sort of business card paper, it's a bit thicker, and it's a small difference, but every time I give it to someone, they really appreciate it, and it does make you stand out as an applicant that you're looking at these smaller details about the quality of the paper. You should always send thank you emails 24 hours after your interview. Short, you just have to thank them for their time. Reiterate your interest in the job, in the company, and just mention 1 or 2 specific things that maybe you enjoyed speaking to them about. And this keeps them fresh in your mind, and this makes sure they don't forget about you, and there may be hundreds of people applying for the job, and this keeps you in their mind for the job. And then body language is really important. I mean, you don't want to slouch, you don't want to fold your arms, you want to have like a powerful body stance, you want to show that you're open with your body and the way you're sitting and the way you're talking and the way your hands are placed and things like that. And they do make a subtle difference to the way the interviewer gets to know you. And that's all I have for the presentation, so thank you.